Hi.
Hello, Dave. How are you?
I'm just making sure everything's on mute and all the things.
Yeah, done the same thing. Closed down everything.
I've had to hide in my parents' bar, would you believe, so that the dogs don't bark and people. It's quite early in the morning here, so the house can be a bit of a jungle. So it's like, all right, go and hide down here. Thought it was quite cliche as well. You're talking to an Irishman. I'm sitting in a bar, so
But also, normally people would have like all their supplements and stuff, like
yeah.
on
I've
their
got
on their
what
back
have I
shelf.
got? I don't even think I've got any of the good whiskey left. I think that was abolished, but I'm actually having a coffee, so just to clear things up.
Oh, nice. Where are you at the moment? You in
I'm in Dublin
Ireland?
now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
You just finishing up your tour?
I'm going to Limerick tomorrow and Sunday, and then I fly back to Scotland next week, and then I'm back the following week to go to Belfast. So I've literally been hopping back and forth between the UK and Ireland for last 5 weeks, something like that.
Wicked. So we'll dive into that in a bit. Like, so generally, it's quite a casual kind of introduction into the podcast, just to welcome you to everyone that's going to be watching and listening. For anyone that doesn't know who you are, can you give us like your elevator pitch of who you are and what you do?
My name's Dan. I'm a mobility specialist. I've been currently traveling the world at the moment, teaching workshops on how to move better. I coach everybody from trainers themselves, learning my methods, as well as people who are currently struggling and I suppose not addressing issues that they might be having. And I show them the simplicity of how to do that. Um, I'm originally from Ireland. I am in Ireland at the moment, but I reside in Australia, and I've got two young girls who obviously are the world to me, and that's kind of why I do what I do. And we just decided to take a chance on life and travel the world while they're young before they start school, and here we are.
That's awesome. How did you even get into like mobility in the first place?
Probably like most trainers, I got attracted to the stuff that were my own limitations, and I questioned why did it happen to me or why were injuries. I played Gaelic football and hurling here in Ireland, and it always baffled me like why was someone else same body type, similar position, not getting the same level of injuries that I had. And 27, third knee injury, I had to start looking, and that was about like 11 years ago at this time. And so what I started to do then was delve into every course I could, just focus really on like what is my body missing that other people's isn't, so that they could, there's some of my friends who are still playing now, 12 years on, and they're 37, 38. So it just baffled me basically.
And were
Um,
you just like hungry for as much information as possible? Like, how did you,
always.
and so did you just go out and look for the first course that you could find, or how did you approach it?
So weirdly, I like to challenge myself. I mean, I think most people should challenge themselves. And when I gave up playing football, like, you have to put it into context that I was training on average probably 5 hours a day. So when that obviously stopped, I had to fill that void. And going to the gym myself and you know doing strength training has its benefits, but what I noticed is you can plateau quite easily when if you don't have a visual goal. Like if I'm always just lifting a weight and it's getting heavier and I'm adding weight to it, like that's awesome, but it can also be boring at times.
Mm.
And so I started to delve into like cool things. I wanted to do gymnastics as a kid, and I don't know what it was like in the UK, but it wasn't really things that boys did at the time. So I, didn't do it. And I came across a handstand class, and that just, at the time I was like, this sounds like fun. I went to it and I was just blown away by why I couldn't do it. Like the fact that I couldn't achieve what I can see 5-year-olds doing just blew my mind. And so what it highlighted was the discrepancies in my body. And as a result, I then searched for people in Ireland at the time who kind of knew how to address these things. And, I paid them to, let's call it mentor me or coach me. I then searched for any kind of workshop that was potentially coming to Ireland or the UK. I think I even traveled as far as Belgium. And so once I started to see the changes in my own body, that's when I, as you're well aware, it's that's when the investment starts to happen, right? Because you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is actually working, and this is working really, really well. And then in 2016, I decided to travel to Australia, and I was following like a particular gym at the time, and it just turned out that they were actually 5 minutes from where I was staying in Sydney, and so I immersed myself into it. I think at the time they were like a smaller kind of a gym. They had, I think it was 11 classes a week, and I just went to every single one, and I just wanted to just absorb this like different way of training. I had been doing kind of touches of it myself, but there's a massive difference when you can get into a crowd of 20 people, be pushed, and especially when you're, getting exposed to new things. And so, not to go on a tangent with that, but I trained in that. They liked what they saw. They asked me to come work for them, and I went to New Zealand for a few months, just exploring and stuff like that. I came back when their gym had got bigger and they had signed a lease on the new place, and then I just like fell down a rabbit hole on handstands and just everything mobility. And alongside that, I had the luxury of training large amounts of people in big classes that we had. So I started to see different body types. I started to see, I went to this seminar. It says you're supposed to do this, but that's not working with this individual. What do we got to change? And then, for me, it was like get pieces of information from all these gurus or, people out there, masters in their field, and then sponge it and soak up what is relevant to you and what's relevant to your clients. And that's kind of, that's really how I started to mold together what works for me, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It
sounds like, Dan, that you're a bit of a risk taker as well, like going all in on stuff and like just going for it. Does that come from like self-belief that it's going to work out?
Yeah, as a child, I was always like captain of a football team, or I was always a team player, but I was always the sort of person who I'd go to bed earlier, I'd eat healthier, I wouldn't drink on the night before a game, because my attitude was these are things that you're not born with. Like someone's born with natural ability, like they're going to be better than you. So for me, it was like I need to make sure that everything in my arsenal going into something is as best as it can be. And then if someone just beats me on pure talent, well, hats off to you. I'll shake your hand. Well done. And that's kind of the way I've approached everything in life, business, training. I'm all or nothing, basically. My stubbornness can be healthy and it can also be not healthy.
Yeah, it's like your biggest strength and your biggest weakness.
100%. Yeah. I think we share similarities in our OCD, and I'm very, sometimes I can come across quite blunt, but I'm very literal. Like I'm very, I like things to be done a certain way. And I suppose becoming a father, it obviously allowed me to work on that because I can tell you now the days of training for 5 hours a day are gone. So that's changed dramatically.
And you're right. It's having that. My wife always says to me, like, it's your biggest strength and your biggest weakness, because I sometimes can't. Sometimes small things affect me in a way that they shouldn't, because I'm so fixated on like problem solving and finding a logical solution to a problem. Also with an element of risk thrown in there. So you're pushing yourself further or harder than perhaps someone else would. And there's always that potential risk of failure. But for me, I never even consider failure as an option. Like it's not a thing on my radar. I don't have like a plan B to stuff. What about you?
Yeah, look, I was very, I'm going to use the word ignorant when I was younger, like, especially like, I got into the fitness industry here in Ireland probably around 2009. And at the time, myself and another guy had kind of introduced TRX to Ireland, and there was no one else doing it at the time. And we got quite big, but I always had this, like, I don't know, at that age, I feel like I didn't, it's not that I didn't want to learn. I don't know, maybe it's youth, maybe it's immaturity, but like you feel like you kind of know enough, and know enough in the sense that like I was very, if it interested me, my mindset was like, okay, I'm going this way. But I never opened my world to other sides like what I do now. Like I like to be exposed to things that I'm not going to say like I don't believe in, but things that like I would question, and then I would immerse myself in it, get an understanding of it, and then I can make a real judgment. I find, in today's world, it's easy to look at something and judge it at face value, but not actually like understanding the thought behind it or the why, as I call it.
Yeah. Do you think that you just like you've reached a point where you just enjoy challenges because you've had success of overcoming challenges or putting yourself out there and being successful, that when these other opportunities present themselves to you now, like you thrive on being able to understand something, figure it out, and then overcome that?
100%. Yeah. For me, it's like, you know, if I talk about mobility as an example, like I'm okay with not being a world-class contortionist. Like I don't need to be the bendiest person in the room. My job is to teach people how to do it. I suppose why people can relate to me is because I'm not like a crazy bendy yogi. I am someone who has had to fight a good fight to get to where I'm at. I have injuries, you know, the length of my arm. And it's like, I have to appreciate that I've put that much trauma on my body in a previous life that even to be able to move the way I can move now, like I have to put my hand up and say, look, well done. Like you've done a great job. Because, you know, I'll be honest, 5 or 6 years ago, I used to look at other people on a social setting and kind of judge myself against them. I think people naturally do that.
Yeah.
And at times it used to get me down a little bit because maybe they were advancing a little bit quicker than I was in my opinion. And it wasn't until I actually, you know, I met a really awesome chiro who went through my body and she was like, look, based on what you've just supplied me, like in terms of injuries and what I've just assessed of how your body moves, she's like, these don't, they don't match up. So she's like, you need to be proud of kind of what you've done. And I feel like that's one of the hardest things for people to do because mobility can take time. Like, you know, we talk about a 2-week transformation, a 6-week transformation in terms of fat loss. And, you know, maybe even like a, I don't know, 16 to 18 week program will get you some decent level of muscle. Like we're talking 12 to 18 months to really see substantial improvements. And I mean that in a physical sense. Like you'll start to feel better after doing stuff for 2 weeks, doing stuff for 6 weeks, because naturally, if you haven't been doing it and now you're teaching your body to move into these areas, you know, your body's going to be rewarded by obviously feeling better, you know?
How do you get clients to adhere to
that? Because I'm a hard ass and I keep them accountable. I also give visuals. So all of my training works towards a visual. And that's kind of why I immerse myself into like handstands and calisthenics and even like gymnastics kind of skills, because I can see where I'm working towards. And then what I say to all my clients is the journey is the exact same. Like the destination is the exact same. The journey is the same, but you just might be getting on at a different spot to someone else. And so for me as a coach, it's I need to find what your baseline is. Most of the times I'll get people who, you know, they're a little bit apprehensive to be exposed to that, right? They don't, especially if someone's a bit deconditioned, they don't like they don't like a reality check. But what I try to show them is like, this is still, let's say a handstand push-up as an example. Good thing to kind of imagine. Someone might be literally doing a push-up on the floor. And it's like, once they understand that the push-up on the floor can then go knees elevated onto a box, feet up onto a wall, you know, work how you balance a handstand alongside that, get off the wall, work negatives, and then we get a handstand push-up eventually. You know, these are, in my eyes, this is a skill. The chin up is another good example. So like we always just try and find where you can achieve. And bands, I'm a big lover of bands for like, say, chin ups as an example, because if I've got 5 different color bands as an example, and someone has to have the thickest band, well, then they know like, well, I don't want to be on the thickest band. So I'm going to keep working until I get to the next band. And once you kind of have that stuff, that's more for the skills. If we're dealing more on like flexibility as an example, I could take a picture of someone's front split. So, you know, what's your lowest front split? Okay, we're going to go and do X, Y, and Z. We're going to do it for 6 weeks, and then we're going to recheck what your front split looks like. And I let them understand that even if it's, I don't know, let's just say 5 degrees in a difference, like if we put that in a ratio of like what that is an improvement, we can relate it to like if someone can do 100 kilo deadlift, and in a 6-week testing, they get up to 110. But that's still only a 10% increase, right? Which is awesome. Like, that's great. So if your degrees improves by 10%, well, that's the same as relative to a deadlift that's come up by 10%. And I think once you relate that to people, or like once you allow people to relate that to something, they get more addicted. And the most important part about all of this is that whether you achieve the front splits is irrelevant, but you working towards it, then you start to see things like, oh, I get into a deeper squat. Oh, like, my hip thrusts are better. My lower back isn't hurting me the same way anymore. So all these things start to come along for the ride. And that's kind of how I get a lot of buy-in, right?
Yeah. And it sounds like the process that you have as well is giving that visual outcome of, for instance, doing a push handstand. So having that defined outcome, but then having like micro progressions along the way. So someone can see like from week to week or from progression to progression that they're actually moving in the right direction to achieving their goal.
Yeah. It also helps with plateau, right? Because, I'm very literal. So I'm like, you need to keep doing this until you get better at it. And then you can do this. Like, understand the why. There's obviously sometimes I'll change a variation just to mix it up. Like, for example, we could use rings as opposed to the floor. We could use parallettes, which are just like your horizontal bars. So again, changing the stimulus can also make someone feel like they're doing a different exercise, but it could be still the same, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I know. What would you think? I mean, because what demographic do you cover? Just pretty much everyone with just mobility issues.
Interestingly, it changed over the last few years. I would say the most of the people that I work on in an online setting at the moment are around that kind of 40 plus. They've tried a lot of things. They've smashed the body. Now they've noticed that like things are a little bit harder. They have kids. They're not able to give the same amount of time. And now there's aches and pains coming into the body. And so then what I do is like, I obviously treat someone like an individual because I have a strength and conditioning background. I have like gymnastic strength background. Mobility flexibility is what I obviously invest in heavily now. So I have different arsenals and I make it really specific to the individual, right? Like if someone's a little bit overweight, then we assess things. Do they actually need to lose the weight now? Or is there a chronic inflammation? Is there other issues in the body that maybe is a priority? And we can just, tweak their nutrition a little bit to allow them to lose a little bit of weight, but actually really addressing the core. Because I would rather someone overweight and out of pain than, what you would perceive as looking their best and they're feeling the worst, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you pretty much described, other than the kids, like you pretty much described me, like heading into my 40s and like been training for over a decade. And now I'm starting to recognize like in places like my shoulders, my knees, like those strains starting to take a toll now. Do you think there's any one particular area that's most common for people that you hear like on a frequent basis?
Well, I saw a study the other day that 80% of people will experience back pain at some time in their life. I thought that was pretty crazy. I also suffered, I had chronic back pain for about 5 years. And then I used to hold on to a lot of excess inflammation. And as a result, well, I don't know if it was from that, but I ended up bursting my appendix, and it was burst for about 3 months without me knowing.
Oh my God.
So obviously my body had protected itself by creating an abscess around it. And so I was holding on to way too much tension. And interestingly, when I had that surgery and then I really focused on the rehab, my back pain went away. And that was 2 years ago, which is obviously awesome. So yeah, I guess I can relate to people. So I think, I never highlight all my injuries. I think I put them on my website just because there is some people who are interested in that. But I had so many injuries. So like, again, I always look at the positive outlook. The biggest traumas that I've had are my biggest learning times. So it's like, I've been hit by cars, fall off railings. I was just a wild kid, right? Like had loads of injuries. But now as an adult, I can relate. Like there is nothing more relatable. Like if you have a chronic back pain and you can't get out of bed, you have to roll on your side to literally get on the floor to try and stand up. And the worst thing for me was sneezing. It was like an electric shock on my lower back. I used to have to brace something if I felt the sneeze coming. When you can actually relate to that kind of side of things, they don't teach you that in a textbook.
No.
And so for me, it's like the biggest injuries are the biggest pains that I see in most people is in the lower back and the hips. And it's mainly because they're sitting on them all day, right? They don't move them. Like my only criticism of a lot of people who are doing like, this is obviously quite a broad statement, but like in a lot of fitness classes that I see that maybe aren't well structured, or a lot of strength training, some of them can be a lot of linear patterns. So if we think of squat, a deadlift, a push, a pull, and they're awesome. But the body's three-dimensional, and the days that we carry out our movements, we have to rotate. We've got to hinge. We've got to, all these weird and wonderful things. So what I try to educate people on is, rather than thinking of the muscles, like what if we thought about the joints? So I might say to someone, today is a hip day as an example. And within the hip day, the priority for me should be rotation, because it's a ball socket joint. Is it rotating the way it should? If it's not, well, that's already going to affect your squat. It's already going to affect your deadlift. And so for me, it's like, what if we break down what the body should be able to do? And then, if we take you as an individual, we go, all right, can you do X, Y, and Z? Or what kind of degrees do you have in internal or external rotation of your hip? Okay. Do we think we could improve that? Possibly. Do we think by improving that, it's going to not only make your lifts easier, it's going to make you feel better, it's going to make you recover quicker? And that's important, because a lot of the stuff that I teach is accessory work, right? Because most people, their drive is potentially elsewhere.
How bad do you think it actually is for people sitting? You mentioned they're like people sitting like for most of the day. Like if someone's inactive, and that's one of the reasons I've got this like standing desk, because I noticed that over time I would start to like, I'm exaggerating it here, but like I'd end up like real rotation on my shoulders, like hunched, and I'd walk like my head down, and it took time, like using my standing desk to be aware of like retracting my scapula, like pulling myself back and making sure that I'm standing upright. Like for people that are sitting at a desk all day long, how detrimental can that be?
Well, this is the important thing to think about. If you're sitting in a flex position for most of your day, remember, there's nothing wrong with a flex position. But then I would ask is like, how much rotation, side flexion, extension happened in that spine in the day? Because you're well aware, as I am, too much of one thing is not a good thing. So it's like, if I can kind of work in ratios, it's like, well, at some point in my week, maybe I should do some extension in my back. And the one problem with always just doing strength training, now I'm put a caveat here, I still strength train. That's not the point. The point is I make sure that everything is addressed. If let's just say I'm doing a lat pull down, I'm technically extending my spine. But if I've just like, jacked my muscles and they're fatigued and everything, the next day, like there's all that pulling on my spine. If I've never then allowed my body to just relax back down, and then I go and do it again the next week, and then I do it again the next week, and then I sit in a flex spine, it's the correlation of what that stems into. That it's like a domino effect, right?
Sure.
So for me, it's important that we, again, if we're just dealing in a general context, I just feel that people could benefit highly from even just training extension in their spine, as an example, because they're already sitting in a flex position, they're on their phones, neck gets quite comfortable in that position. So it's super important that we just look at the body as a whole, and then we focus on. So for me, this is very simple. Whole body, we should be trying to rotate all our joints. The only caveat is the spine, where I would recommend that most people flex and extend as a priority, specifically segmentation, because that's what the body's designed to do. If the spine is already locked in, let's just say someone has, a lower back that, I don't know, let's say 3 vertebrae are just jammed together. If you're going to try to rotate where 3 vertebrae are stuck together, it's going to be on the top and the bottom, because they're most likely going to be the weakest points, because everything else is jammed together. So what I mean by priority is if we could learn to start to get a bit of movement in those 3 vertebrae, get them to actually start to segment, flex, and extend, the facets are going to sit nicer together, and then that joint is going to rotate a lot easier anyway. In a perfect world, I would get someone to train 5 hours a day, but reality says that's not going to happen. So we have to try to look and go, okay, Mark, you as an individual right now, strength training takes 5 to 6 of your days. Okay, maybe we could add in some accessory work. Did you notice that you're recovering quicker? Okay, cool. Now we know the extension of your spine works better. Maybe we'll switch that out, or maybe do a lower volume of that and increase your rotational stuff.
And what would be the minimum amount of input you think someone would have to do in order to start to see a benefit?
So a lot of my programs work in 2 ways. One is more about consistency, while the other one might be just about what reality allows. Consistency would be like getting a morning practice, like 15 minutes a day. And again, this is a very general kind of approach. While as a lot of the programs that I sell, I do like 2 times a week. If someone wants to do 3 times, they kind of add in another session where we've broken it down. And that's kind of what I've seen, over the last 20 years of coaching, specifically the last 8 years where it's really been mobility specific. That's where I've seen people get the most benefit. If it's someone, let's say like yourself, who's doing strength training, what I would usually do then is, let's say, I'll give a back squat as an example. Let's say somebody's extending from their TL junction, so just that kind of, mid back area. Let's say they're extending from that too much because they don't have the external rotation to hold the bar comfortably on their back. Well, then maybe, we give them either like a hack squat, or they do like a goblet squat or something like that. But in between that, maybe I'm giving them an external rotation exercise. So the goal is to get to the back squat, but at the moment you don't have the requirements to hold it optimally. And I say that because I'm not going to stop you if your big drive is the back squat. But most of the times when I highlight this to a client, I go, okay, I'll do this for the moment, knowing that I want to get back to that, right? Because long term, it's going to affect you somewhere.
So it's almost like a very small step, maybe like, because I would perceive it as like a small step backwards to then get your body moving in the way you need it to, so that then you can take like 2 steps forward.
100%. And it's only backwards if you look at it as a numbers game, right? If I look and say, naturally I can back squat more than I can front squat. So it's like, do I look at a front squat as being less, or do I say it's harder and that's why I can't lift as heavy? So for me, it's like, well, if we can address the things that make that harder, and then you start to add your weights onto that, like there's always going to be a ratio difference, right? There's like, most people will naturally back squat more than they can front squat.
Sure.
But I would say there's a lot more, like there's hidden limitations that most people don't see when they back squat, because maybe they haven't been made aware of it, right? While as a front squat, most people, if they can't get the bar up like this, or it's choking their things, they stay away from it.
And that's, yeah, you're exactly right. And it's so interesting to go into like those different areas and to understand it more. I'd like to shift gears ever so slightly now, but not ever so slightly, massively, into talking about business and social and the life that you lead. Because one of the things, when we first started speaking, I think in one of our messages, I was like, oh my God, like, how have you got 500,000 plus followers on Instagram? And we had a very brief exchange about that. But tell us like how you did that. How did you go from, what were you before, and then how did you get the growth?
That was about October last year, I believe. And I think at that stage I had about 350 or 380. And so I've always been active on social media. I think one of my friends actually sent me a screenshot from 2017. It was like January 2017. And it was me writing to him. He's in Dublin, I was in Australia. And I said, hey, I've just bought a camera. I'm going to start to do some YouTube videos. And he wrote back and he's like, oh, awesome, dude. Like, I wish you the best of luck, which again, I thought it's cool when you look back at it now. And I look back at those videos and I cringe, but anyway, we had to start somewhere, right? And
yeah,
I guess I immersed myself in that. The most important thing here was I enjoy it, right? And that's what kept me consistent. I, at the start, was doing a lot of handstand videos, got a bit of traction, got up to about 5,000 followers, something like that. I think I remember being at about 2,500, 3,000, and I started to piggyback a few big like training methodologies that I knew they would reshare my videos if I kind of highlighted an exercise that they were teaching, right? And then when I got up to 5,000, they hit a bit of a stalemate, right? That was probably for about a year and a half. But I still posted every day because, again, I didn't do it to be fixated on this kind of reward system. I did it because I really enjoyed it. I have not to go on a caveat, but I had a tangent, sorry. I had a tech degree, or like I've been big into computers when I was younger and all the way up, but then I kept getting veered towards the fitness industry. So I really enjoy editing videos. I really enjoy being a bit of a tech geek in the background. So I do most of the stuff myself. Anyway, I was always blocking out the likes of Gary Vee and all these people, always like, oh yeah, it's easy for them, blah, 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 blah. And then eventually I went, do you know what? I'm just going to listen to them and I'm going to copy what they're telling me to do. That's basically what I'm going to do. And Gary Vee was barking about TikTok. So I decided, okay, I have all these videos that I've been posting every single day on Instagram. I'm just going to reformat them in a Reels setting so that I can post them on TikTok. I posted 3 times a day for 3 months, and then it started to pop off. And I was like, oh, lo and behold, this is working. So I got up to about 30,000 followers on TikTok, and I was like, whoa, this is working. And for me, this is weird thing that was in my head. I always looked at Instagram as people who knew me personally. I looked at TikTok as like, I don't know who these people are. I can just put out what I feel I actually enjoy making and what I want and what I think is useful for people. And then what I did was I started to look at the traction that was happening, right? So, if I look at Alex Hormozy, if I look at Gary Vee, they all have like a particular format that they try to promote to people. And then what I did was I said, okay, I started to do stuff which are a bit more boisterous like than what I was doing. They were a bit more catchy, and I was doing them specifically on TikTok, and they were getting really good views. And no matter, like, I had this particular format, which was the one of getting people to try and touch their toes, right? And I did 5 different types of that video. And I posted them all on TikTok at different times, and they all popped off. So then I went, do you know what? I'm just going to try it on Instagram. I'll just I don't care. People can judge me all they want. Again, this was in my head. I don't really care. I posted it, and then I just remember saying to my partner, I've just grown by like 200 followers. And on Instagram, like at the time, my Instagram was quite flat. And so then when it popped off, I was like, that's a bit weird. Like, I wonder what that is. And then the next day I was like, it was 2000. And then it just went like every time I opened the app, there was just like 100 new followers, 100 new followers, 100 new followers. So I knew then it was the algorithm, right? Because for anybody who doesn't know, like the algorithm basically qualifies you. So it sends it out to a certain amount of people. If they watch a certain amount of time, or there's a certain amount of shares or comments or engagement, then they send it out to more. So you have to keep qualifying. And so because the growth was the same, then I knew it had to be the algorithm. And so in a 2-week period, it grew by like 300,000 or something. Like, it was astronomical. And what I put that down to is that, obviously there's one video that went pretty crazy, but we are like, we're features of habit. So if we see something that we really like, we're going to investigate and try to find more. So because I had that good volume of, what I think are high quality videos, people started to watch and watch and watch and watch and share and share and share. So it was giving the algorithm, it was literally nurturing the algorithm. It was giving them everything they wanted, and it was high performing. And then obviously, life went pretty crazy, and that's why I reached out to you, because before that I was doing a lot of my trainings on like a PDF as an example. So I was like, okay, I've got to, like, the volume is just too much. I've got to change something here. And I reached out to a lot of different platforms. I looked at, again, my benefit is that I have a tech background. I felt Kahuna's was on its way to where I wanted to be. And when we had that initial chat, we kind of had talked about what kind of plans were coming, and that kind of excited me. So I was like, all right, I'm willing to invest in this, knowing that it was probably going to take a year before it gets to where I really wanted to be. But for me, yeah, I like the energy that you gave when we initially spoke, and I'm a very loyal person, right? Like, the people who work for me have worked for me for 6 years. Like, they'll grow as I grow, kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you so much for your support on that. Like, it's huge. Like, I remember our first conversations, and to be involved in it for that period of time. And I know you're excited about some of the new workout stuff that's coming in a couple of months. So yeah, I can't wait to get that out so that you can start to play with that.
Yeah, it's massive for me. Like, it's massive. I've got a lot of things in the pipeline, and the only negative of when your Instagram blows up like that is everything makes sense. Like, do I go high ticket client? Do I go, low ticket but go to the masses? Like, do I go hybrid style training? Like, it all makes sense because you literally have the volume of people sitting there in front of you. So it's like, hey, pick where your heart is. And at the moment, I do a lot of high ticket stuff, but I'm actually building a membership platform now, because I feel, for me, maybe it's selfish of me, but as I get older, I don't play team sports anymore. So, as much as I love sitting in front of a computer, like, one-on-one stuff, to me, it doesn't excite me as much as creating a community. It's like yourself, right? When you go and do a live in the Facebook and you get to engage with people, like, imagine when you log off that call, you're like, that felt great. People are like really enjoying what I'm building, and it gives me great satisfaction. Like, you're very similar to me. Like, I think I emailed you back at like 4:20 this morning. Like people think this shit is easy. They think like, oh yeah, I'll just post a few videos. Like, I've got videos of me with a burst appendix filming exercise videos at 2:00 in the morning in my friend's gym because that had to be done, right? And I have 2 kids, so I could have every excuse under the sun. I live the other side of the world, away from all family support. But my stubbornness is that other people who make this work are doing the exact same thing. So you got to follow suit. Like, don't try and change the wheel. You just basically got to work hard. Like, there's nobody going to outwork me in what I'm doing. And that's why I'm getting to where I'm going. Jim?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree with that more. It's people don't see it. People see, like, in your position now, people probably think like, look at Dan, the success he's got, his huge following, like living life up in the Maldives, which we'll talk about in a sec. And they just think that that's it now. This is like, you just have this easy life where you're just going to do these few little things, make loads of money, and you're set. And it's the same with Kahunas. People look at it and so Monday we're going to hit like 3,000 coaches. So they're like, oh wow, it's like successful. Like, everything's great now. You've got all this stuff, but it's like, no, we just got more things to deal with, more things to do. Like, it's harder now than it was at the beginning. So it is like, that's the thing I say to everyone. It's anyone's capable of achieving what they want. It's just having that relentless desire and hunger for it, like day in, day out. You just can't give up. Like, you just got to keep like pushing through, even when it gets tough.
Yeah, I see like, you'll see some business coaches who I know are doing pretty well, right? Like, they're not like half of them that are, pretending they're doing well. But like, some people still say like, well, why are you working? It's like, I said this to my mom about 3 weeks ago. I was like, I've retired in my eyes. Like, I don't dread getting up. I enjoy talking to my clients. I don't take on clients if I feel that it's not going to work. Like, I truly enjoy what I do. Like, the only negative that I have right now is the fact that my kids are in Scotland at the moment and I'm here in Ireland. Like, other than that, like I really mean it. Like, if I'm going to go to the gym today, I'm going to record videos. I get excitement out of trying to think like, okay, what will I do in this video? Like, how will this be crafty? How will this benefit somebody? And I know it's cliche as a trainer, but like, I really enjoy that I get to now help so much more people, right? Like, I love when people write to me or comment on my stuff and say like, I'm 82 years of age. I've been trying your videos and, now I haven't felt this well in so long. These people haven't given me any money, right? Like, and I'm still helping people. So I have tiers of how I help people, right? Like, I have YouTube playlists that people can go on if they don't want to pay any money. I have stuff on my Instagram that people can literally follow along to, not have to invest in anything other than their time. And they're seeing great results, right?
How important do you think that is?
I do that because most of the people that I do follow that are doing very well is like, you've got to give people stuff. Like, if you're only the sort of person that just wants money, then that's not value, right? Money is only a trade, right?
How important do you think that is in just giving as much value as you can for free?
I think that was the difference between me getting to where I am now and me not, because I was always apprehensive at the start. I always thought, give everybody all my information, they're not going to work with me. But it's been quite the opposite, because people go, I really like what you do. Can you do that with me? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's this weird thing. I'm like, but everything is there. Like, and it's the way I can work. Like, again, I have a tech background. I know that if I'm searching for something, I can find it somewhere, right? Like, but I also then know that I might find something, watch it for a while, and then go, okay, I'm ready to invest in this person. I like this person.
And for me, it's convenience now in buying things. Like, I could spend the time and like go through all the effort of learning something new or doing something new. But if I've investigated it enough to know that I need this, then I would much rather just pay someone who I know is much better at it than I am, who can then just say to me like, here's a plan. And then as part of my day, I'm just like, I could just stick to this every day instead of like having to spend more time on it.
100%. Everybody, like, in my eyes, everybody needs a mentor in whatever it is you do. The dancer has a dance coach. The sprinter has a sprint coach. Doesn't mean the sprint coach is better than the sprinter, right? But what they do have is they've got a knowledge to look at you as an individual and say, hey, you should tweak this, this, and this. And that works in business mentorship too. If you find the right person, it's like, well, actually, maybe you should do it this way. I will be honest and say that I've never had a business mentor, just because most of the stuff that I delved into, I really enjoyed. So I started to learn it myself. That's kind of why I never actually invested in a business coach. I guess because there's a lot of cowboys out there, right? Unfortunately.
Very true. I want to loop back to something real quick that you mentioned, is that you're building a membership site. Where are you building this and why?
So the main thing for me is when I've started to see who my clientele is, and some of the people who I've worked with in like high tickets, they've kind of said that, you know, for them, they need the push. They need literally me sitting there and coaching them. So the way I've planned my business is build a mentorship, which is more like a web-based, so where people can actually go and learn things. And then based off the learning, they can then access my training app. So when they're actually in the gym, here's your training. Whilst if there's somebody who literally, you know, needs to be told, hey, 7 p.m. Tuesday night, you're logging in and I'm going to be on screen and you better be there. And that's kind of the way my membership platform is going to work, because I feel for what I offer, a lot of the people who need it the most are not the most motivated to do it. So it's kind of like, okay, you know, you can come and you can train with me on screen. If you miss it, you can still access it. You can do that twice a week. And then this is your membership for the month, right? I think it's very important because, you know, if I take my mom as an example, she's like mid-60s, she trains herself. But then if I take my stepdad, you know, same age, doesn't train. So it's kind of like, how can I buy into that person who needs it more and actually show them, like, it's not daunting. Like, I'm not expecting you to put 100 kilos on a deadlift. If you want to do this at home, you can do this at home. This is about like stuff that's probably going to add years to your life. Like, and I mean that because at the moment, like if I think about it in my own context, I've been traveling for quite a bit. I now have an issue in my calf from traveling so much. And the stress that that's causing in my head, like, because I'm constantly thinking about it, I'm like, what are the people going through who, you know, have these debilitating things as they're driving? And so a lot of the research that I did was into like whether, again, like what I said earlier, do I go high ticket, hybrid, or masses? And for me, it's like the masses is the people who need the mobility the most. If I can find the right price point that they're all, you know, that they value, then it's like, okay, what is the offering that's going to make them stay and be consistent with it? So with the way Kahunas is going eventually, I then see myself eventually putting that onto Kahunas, right? So that's kind of what we spoke about October last year, right? And so there's a lot of things that are important to me. Like if we don't have an integration of Zapier as an example, like I can't take on 1,000 clients because I have to sit there and try to, you know, so this is where obviously you're a big lover of AI. This is where having the AI and having things like this is going to be super beneficial so that I can really add value where I need to be there. And then everything else makes the client feel valued, right?
For sure. And we'll have, so towards the end of the year is where we'll be launching the group stuff. So we've got at the moment, we're doing like all the workout builder, which we spoke about, then all the nutrition is being done. Then we've got, of course, got wearables, video uploads for exercises. And then after all that, we have all the group stuff. And within that, you'll be able to use groups for, if you're doing challenges or something, let's say, and you wanted like 20, 30, 40 people to a group, but also we're going to open it up in January so that you could offer a one-to-many service so that you would be able to use the app with almost like group forum boards, and you'd be able to have content into different like sections of the app, and you'd really be able to like customize it heavily so that within your own app, you can have the one-to-one, you could have them groups, and then you could have like communities all within the one place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And that's kind of like what I need now. So that's kind of why I've done the way I'm doing it. So it's kind of like I see so much value in Kahunas, which is why I'm loyal to them, because I still use it with all my high ticket clients, right? I'm using it day in, day out. My fiance uses it. She's been one of my biggest researchers on it, and she can be blunt honest with it. And a lot of it is positive, right? Especially the changes. So a lot of the changes have been really good. There was a few glitches on the logging of workouts, and that's all been fixed. So that's like, I have to say, like, I'm pleasantly like impressed with it. You know, I wouldn't have stuck as long as I have with it if it wasn't ticking all the boxes. But when I looked at other places, this is the way I relate it. It's like renting a house, right? So if you don't want to put the financial input into building your own app, then you got to look for something that ticks the right amount of boxes for you and your business. And then you got to obviously absorb or be okay with the stuff that you don't have, right? And for me, yeah, like the fact that I can even talk to the person who developed it, that already impressed me, right? The fact that you are like ridiculously active in the Facebook group. You are, I think I wrote to you about like I was a bit disheartened by something, and you were straight on an email to me, and you were like, "Hey, that's not what I meant." Blah blah blah. And I think that's, for me, that's realistic, right? That's what I want people to understand, is that sometimes things don't, like, they don't go the way you want them to go. But the fact that you were able to be honest to me, you were able to come back to me, we ironed things out, and it was like, awesome, cool. This is like, things happen, right? Like things get in the way, and that can be with everything. And I love where it's going. I love the simplicity of it. I've also seen other apps that you've developed, so I know how good you and your team's work can be. And I guess from the other apps that you showed me to go and look at, like, they really impressed me. So that was kind of one of the main reasons why I was like, okay, this is going in the right place. Like,
awesome. It's so like, I love your understanding of all of that, because I'm the same. Like, it's my biggest thing is just not to bullshit people. Like, I think in this day and age, people are so aware of bullshit anyway, that why, if something happens, I'm just gonna put my hands up and say, like, we messed up, or like, I wasn't supposed to do that, and I'm really sorry. Like, rather than coming up with some sort of weird excuse for why something happened, because people know, and then there's no trust or authenticity in anything you ever do.
Yeah, I've had that with some of my clients, where in the past like, I've gone and taught classes where I'm violently ill, but I'm so stubborn that I'm like, I'm not letting someone down. And that has its downfalls and it has its positives. But what I've noticed is, if you actually just be honest to people, they're just like, wow. Like, when I told them afterwards, they were like, holy shit, man, like, you should have just like told us. And I was like, well, that's who I am. I'm not going to change. Like, I come from a very respectful upbringing, a very loyal upbringing. And it's like, that's the whole reason why I had a burst appendix for 3 months. Like, I'm just, it's not always good, because obviously now in the world we can talk openly about issues that men are having and stuff like that. For me, growing up, it was always suck it up. So in a way, I've worked hard on that to be able to talk to that. But the benefit of being stubborn is that, like, if I have a goal and I know that I can achieve it, like, I just know that there's just steps to achieve it, and I'm not at all those steps yet. And so, like, for me, it's like, if I do all those steps and then I fail, well, then I know I tried. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think people give up a little bit too soon on things.
Yeah, I always say that. And I always say that when I have discussions with people, I'm like, so the position you're in right now, if you try and do X, Y, and Z, and it takes you a year and then it doesn't work out, the worst case is you're going to end up where you are right now. Like, it's not that bad. You can do something else. Don't panic.
100%. And you touched on the Maldives earlier. I can chat about that if you like.
Yeah, for sure. So why did you decide to even do this and start traveling with a family and with kids and everything? Was it like, why did you do it, and what was it all about?
I guess it was living away from my extended family. So, like, living in Australia, and obviously with the last few years of being kind of restricted from traveling, that was a big thing for us. And we were actually due to travel last November. And then, I don't know, I just didn't feel like it was the right time. And then when I made that decision, it was like my world opened this energy to, like, everything else. And then all of a sudden my Instagram went crazy. And then I had the Hard Rock Hotel in the Maldives reach out to me. When they first reached out to me, I thought it was a fake message, as you can imagine. But then we obviously searched the individual who actually wrote to me as the CEO. And so we obviously found him on LinkedIn. I was like, oh, he's legit. And they wanted me to come out because he had been trying my videos, and he was is big into jiu-jitsu. I noticed a massive improvement in his jiu-jitsu, being a 47-year-old rolling against 20-odd-year-olds. And so he was just like, I need that guy to come out here. Like, it's very high quality what he's doing. I want to obviously give this to myself and the players that are here, but it's a premium brand. So I want to bring him here and train our guests and show them the quality of movement. Amazing. And we went out for 2 weeks, and then obviously went back to Australia. And then we were like, oh, we got this like itch to travel. And I was like, I've always been bold. Like, I've always just been like, why not? Like, I've lost family members very young age. I'm like, life's for living, right? The girls haven't started school. I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 9-month-old. I was like, this is the perfect opportunity. And we started to look into, okay, what's involved? how long could we go? My partner's on maternity leave, so it made a lot of sense. And then the Hard Rock actually came back to us and said, hey, look, we're actually going to be doing a longer event the next time. It's going to be 4 to 5 weeks. Would you be interested? And I was like, let me look at it and I'll come back to you. Long story short, I looked into everything and I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I have a beautiful fiance who is like the yin to my yang, right? Like, I feel like you have to have a partnership, right? Because these things, especially when kids are involved, they're not going to happen unless both of you are fully invested. And she's a massive part of Handsdan. She's does a lot of the stuff in the background. She's the person who makes me make the right decision. And so we just decided, okay, let's put everything into storage and let's just make it happen. Like and that's what, like, that's just my mentality. It's like, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And what I took from that was the mentality of, not that we can't afford it. It's just, how can we afford it?
Yeah.
And so we just made it happen. We went to the Maldives for 5 weeks, pushed into 6 weeks. And then we headed to Europe, to mainland Europe, and then back to Ireland. Then what I said was, well, let's just do workshops everywhere we go. Let's show people, how easy it is to move well. And now as I said, I'm currently in Ireland, and we hope to then hit the States and Canada, heading back to Sydney probably around late August, September time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you mentioned something which I couldn't agree with more, which is that your fiance plays such a big part in your success together, because I'm exactly the same. Vicky, my wife, is without her, there's no way I'd be anywhere near. I wouldn't be doing this. I'd probably be, I don't know, in jail or something.
Well, the important thing here is that, like, in 2019, going into 2020, I moved away from an old gym that I was working in, and I was earning less than $60,000 a year. And I was there, like, don't get me wrong, I love this gym and it's awesome. And they taught me so much. I was there for nearly 4.5 years. And obviously, for visa reasons, I was in Australia and they had sponsored me, which was amazing. And then when I left, like, I stepped away from my income basically, right? And then lockdown happened. And because I wasn't on a permanent visa, I didn't get any kind of payments from the government in Australia or anything like that. And thankfully, my partner does well for herself, and she, like, obviously supported us. And that is very important, is to have a good partnership, right? Like, whether that's with, your personal partner, or whether you find someone in business who you work really, really well to. That's, for me, that's why we're here where we are. Handsdan is both of us, right? It's very important that people understand that. Like, she financially supported me. I have a lot of loyal clients who financially supported me when no one else did, right? Like, the Australian government didn't. I remember when lockdown happened, I lost like 18 clients in 1 week. And it was like, that hit hard, and there's two ways of looking at that outcome. And this is the way I took it. I said, okay, I've just lost 18 clients. That was about 24, 25 hours of work. I was like, I've got a lot of work to do. I'm going to start building some. And so that's when I first built my first Handstand course. And there was probably about 1,000 hours put into that. And so I'm saying this because it's important. It's like, I could have become miserable. I could have said, this isn't fair. Like, I'm just going to go back to Ireland, or, everybody hates me. The government's against me. But instead I went, I've got 24 hours free now. I'm going to, because like, it wasn't that I had another option, right? Like There was two options. One was like, just sit and moan about it. The other option was, okay, now you have 24 hours free. Why don't you just build the stuff, because you don't have anything else to do anyway? And that's always been my mentality. It's just been like, look at it. So when things got really, really busy, I hired a videographer as an example. I hired a web developer. It wasn't that I wasn't able to do these things myself, but now I freed up, like, another 24 hours. So like, okay, cool. For the sake of, what I get into the business and what I need to expend to them, it made a lot of sense, right?
Sure. And your courses, Dan, could coaches take them to, like, find out more about mobility 100%. And then to apply that with their own clients?
I couldn't see why you wouldn't, right? Like, if you are somebody watching this right now and you don't focus on mobility training, you haven't delved into it, you don't give it the respect it deserves, and for sure, it's like what you said earlier on. Like, you could either go onto YouTube and type in mobility and watch stuff, or you could reach out to somebody who's literally done it for the last 8 years on probably, you know, tens of thousands of people, because I used to deal in large group settings, and probably get there in, you know, 20% of the time, right? Or get the level of understanding that you need, which is why most people need mentors, right? In every industry.
For sure. We're actually, so on Kahunas over the next couple of months, we're opening up like an education portal where I've got John Jewett from J3 University is doing some in-depth materials for us there. Also on hypertrophy training, I've got Elliot Wise doing a beginner and advanced like business entrepreneurship like section. And Elliot's a good friend and like serial entrepreneur. Like he's one of the guys that you can trust for that. But the reason I say all that is because if you're up for it, it would be awesome if you wanted to do like a mini series or a few videos as like education, and then obviously that would all just link through to your own stuff.
I mean, I think the more people that give this the respect it deserves, the better, right? Like I feel as coaches, it's like I always look at it as like extend your arsenal, right? Like add another weapon, right? Like, and you know, what happens if you do have somebody in front of you and they can't do what you want them to do? Like, wouldn't it be awesome if you just had a little quick drill that maybe, so I'll give you an example. If someone doesn't know how to fully extend their hip, like maybe I could give them a glute specific exercise that I could teach them on the floor, let them understand what that feels like, and then go back to it and say, hey, do you remember what you just felt? That's what I want you to feel now. And that's been a game changer, even when I'm teaching coaches and they're like, oh, like it's so clever that you just said to them to do X, Y, and Z. And they were able to, and I'm like, because if I've never been there, then it's just like going into the abyss. If you can educate me on what that feels like or what that is, there's one thing, it's one thing to show me it. It's another one for me to actually experience it, right? And that's something that a really good coach does. It's like the Handsdan approach, right? If I can explain it to a 5-year-old, then, you know, I have a decent level of understanding of that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Like, and so the whole point of that education section is to have people that I trust, that I know what they're talking about and do a great job, so that we can help coaches, and then ultimately if they want to find out more and explore it, then they can get that directly from you.
Yeah I mean, I'll be super keen for that. I mean, as I said to you before, I love what I do. The benefits of when you love what you do is like it doesn't feel like work, right? And thankfully now I'm reaping the rewards of all the hard work, and know that the hard work still continues. Hence I was up at 4 a.m.
Same here. So like genuinely, thank you so much for coming on. Like your story is so interesting, inspirational. There's loads of great stuff in there that people can be able to take away from it. Where can people find out more about you?
So it's very easy, Handsdan. So Handsdan, and it's all on every social platform you can think of. Website's handsdan.com. I actually have a mobility masterclass. It was going to be 90 minutes. It's online kind of learning specifically for the spine and back. And that's going to be on the 17th of June, depending on your time zone, but 17th of June geared towards the States and Europe. So if you are in Australia, it would actually be the 18th. And that's just going to be, I suppose, a really good introduction into how to move your hips and spine, because for me, they should be your priority. It's called the core for a reason. And when you actually address that, everything else starts to move even better. It's just like a puppet on a string, right? You pull a string, something else is affected. So I'm really excited for that. I'm just finishing the landing page, so that'll be going out probably later. I don't know when this is going to go out, but it'll be out probably by the time this is edited and put out there. So handsdan.com, you'll see it on that.
Cool. And we'll put a link to that here. And cool. when it comes up to that date as well, I'll take a clip from this video and then put a link in my bio so that we can then get people just to click through from social as well.
Yeah, awesome. That would be amazing. Thank you.
No worries. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Mark.